Welcome in. It is Illini Cast, and I am Austin Berkland alongside Sunny Verma, and we are part of the Armchair Illini Network, and we cannot believe that it is week 2 of the college football season going up against number 19 Kansas. And man, Sunny, Illinois has a shot in this game. We'll run through a few of the keys, but what are your initial impressions of this game, Sunny?
As the kids say, Austin, the vibes are immaculate right now. I've never seen all of social media, just everybody just have such a genuine, positive attitude for a game like this, where again, we're still underdogs. I think we opened up as a 6 or 6.5 point underdogs. It was as low as 4 in some of the sports books I was looking at earlier today. So some money is coming in on Illinois. And, it's just, I hope we're not setting ourselves up for disappointment, but, this is going to be one of the biggest games of the season. And not just that, it's one of the biggest games in a really, really long time.
I mean, this is a put up or shut up style of game for Brett Bielema after last year and failing to meet a bowl game expectation. This year's schedule really does line up for Illinois to have success, to go to a bowl game, and it all starts here in this game against Kansas. The defensive ends have got to be stout today. The outside linebackers have to read the quarterback, read the halfback, and really see what this Kansas running attack is going to do play by play. But my goodness, a sellout crowd, which is something that you don't normally see for Illinois games this early on in the season. Normally, you have to build up the Illini fans' trust, but this is an opportunity for Brett Bielema to really catch on. This is like the bait game. Like, how you're fishing and like the fish like nibbles a little bit. This is the game. If Illinois wins, then it'll be fully in. The fan base will be fully bought in, and Brett Bielema and this Illini football crowd can really get NIL going, get some sponsorships going, get some mega things done for the iFund as well. So this is a huge game, not in terms of just one game and making a bowl. This could be changing things for this fan base's mentality.
Yeah, I agree. We always, you and I are like equally as big football and basketball supporters. And what we always kind of hoped for was the football audience to really show up and come support the team. That part of the fan base seems to always be a little apathetic. Well, today they have. We've sold out the stadium for the first time, as you said, in 8 years. And now it's on Brett. It's on that football team. You want them to show up, put up a good game. If you can escape with a victory, well, then now you're talking about Central Michigan next week, 3-0 start. So you can a potential battle of unbeaten's week 4, Nebraska against Illinois. That game would get really, really hyped. And all of a sudden, you're going up against a freshman quarterback. It's the seeds are there to have a really, really positive season, but it's all going to start today. You beat Kansas, which could be the ultimate coin flip game, and all of a sudden, that 6 wins that you're going to need to make a bowl game, it's within reach. If you lose today, if you get blown out today, then all that momentum that we built coming into this week, it's almost out the window, because then all of a sudden it's going to be the same old, same old. People aren't going to show up next week. If we lose against Nebraska, again, we're going to be dealing with the 25 to 35, 40,000 crowd max again. So, I hate to say this, but the crowd, the fan base, we've done our part at this point. Now, today, starting at 6 o'clock, it's going to be on the football team.
And I mean, you look at the rest of the schedule. I know we are going to talk about this game more individually here in a little bit, but I mean, Penn State only beat Bowling Green today, 34-27. I mean, Bowling Green is probably going to establish themselves as a really good MAC program this year, but this is supposed to be the number 8 team in the country and at home, and they only beat Bowling Green by 34-27. So if you beat Kansas, you beat Central Michigan, you have a competitive game against Nebraska. Who knows what that game's going to bring with the great Dylan Raiola's quarterbacking? I mean, that guy, he is as advertised thus far. We'll see what happens with the Colorado Buffaloes. But I mean, this is going to be a game where against Kansas, where if Illinois wins, you can start dreaming of some bigger things. Maybe it's not a college football playoff by any means or Big Ten that are watching this or will watch this after the Illinois Kansas game. But it does feel like this could be a game where you're like, all right, this is the way that Illinois played on a January 1st bowl game against a top-notch SEC team. Like the first two teams maybe that missed the playoffs, or the top two teams that missed the playoffs in the Big Ten. Um, you can be in that kind of ballpark. And for Illinois and this newfangled Big Ten that's deeper, if Illinois can establish itself above the likes of Wisconsin, who are struggling to score so far this season, you look at some other teams, Minnesota, they have a loss on the schedule already. I mean, you could be that top team in that tier three. And again, it's all about building blocks. If
Yeah.
you keep building, you keep building, you keep building, you'll get bites of the apple of greater things in this college football world that's tough to break into with the Georgias, Ohio States, Oregons. At least you can be in a conversation where you're relevant every week, where college game day and big noon kickoff are going to be talking about you every single week. And that's all we ask for as Illini fans is really that. Is just to be relevant on the national stage week in and week out, and not just some footnote in the world of college football.
Right, which has been the recent history for Illinois football, and a victory today, like even before talking about any magical aspirations we might have, it will show progress, right? Like last year, everybody remembers the Kansas game. Everyone remembers us getting boat raced out of that game almost immediately. I think it was a Friday night game, so like almost the whole
Yeah,
world was watching,
I was in
and
attendance in Lawrence.
yeah, it was like 34-7 at 34-7 after three. And obviously the score ended up being a little respectable at the end. But you saw the offensive line look bad. You saw the running back look bad. Luke Altmaier was running for his life. He was our best passer and rusher at that point in the season. Some of us who've been following Illinois, we know it's a different team now. But to have that backdrop of basically going up against the same opponent, I mean, Kansas is returning almost all their players from that team last year. You want to see us put up more of a fight just to be able to confirm ourselves that progress is being made. Like this team, you and I, we can keep saying that Brett has us on the right track, that we're getting better and better, but there's only one way to prove that. And today could be a huge step in that direction.
Absolutely. And this is a showcase game for some of the transfers that got brought in as well. This is a game that they can look at and really have some good NFL tape against a good Kansas team. You look at a guy like Franklin, who's going up against Kobe Bryant, who is a top-notch defensive back in the Big 12. You have J.C. Davis as an offensive lineman to showcase that he can change an offensive line's trajectory from where it was last year against Kansas, against this year versus Kansas. If he's able to do that, that offensive line will look so much better, and it'd be like, oh man, we got to draft J.C. Davis, because look at what the Illinois offensive line was last year versus this year. Same thing with Terrence Brooks. He has some NFL aspirations coming from the University of Texas, and this is a game where he's faced some of these Big 12 guys in Kansas whenever Texas was in fact in the Big 12. So this is a game where he can use his familiarity against some of these wide receivers, or talk to a buddy of his that was the defensive back in the Big 12 and be like, yo, I'm facing Kansas. How do we attack? I mean, there are so many benefits from these transfer guys that Illinois brought in that can help in this Kansas game. And I think you look at last year's Kansas game, if you had some more offensive firepower with Franklin, you have J.C. Davis. I don't know if you win that game, but it sure doesn't seem to be that blowout in that first half that I was in attendance for last year.
Well, we also have, again, as you said, like we fixed our offensive line. Last year it was a complete wreck, at least at the beginning part of the season. And, arguably our most important player this season was nowhere to be seen at this point, game 2 last year. And obviously that's Caden Fagan, who I think is going to be a huge part. If we're able to come out with a victory today, this could be the Caden Fagan breakout game. That's what I'm kind of hoping for. But it's the same thing. Like with Terrence Brooks, I'm very interested in seeing, was last week just a message with him not starting, with him not playing until the end of the game, or is this a situation where no, it's legit. He still has to gain the trust of the staff, and because again, like you're right, his experience playing in the Big 12 against a team like Kansas could prove invaluable right now. But obviously there's some issues. Like, are those issues resolved? I guess we're about to find out in about an hour.
Yeah, I mean, that defensive back situation last week against EIU was a little fascinating. I kept looking for Terrence Brooks in the horseshoe, and he just wasn't there. And so I don't know if that's because of the competition as well. Like they were going to give a bunch of younger guys some shots to showcase their worth, or and not just give it to the transfer to just showcase what he needs to do. But we'll see what happens against a passing game that seems to be really good from last year and even in the first game this year. So if that's the case, then hey, then let's use him, see what he can do against this Kansas offense. But yeah, I think Caden Fagan is the story of this game. I think if Caden is able to get what he wants from the line of scrimmage and push that line forward, just fall forward, get 5 yards a carry, something crazy like that, I think Illinois wins this game. And with these new clock rules and with the headset device, college football pace is slower than it ever was. So if Illinois is able to string a few drives together, I mean, that first game of the season overall between Florida State and Georgia Tech, I think they had like 7 possessions each in the first half and in the second half. So I think if Illinois is able to control this game and not let Daniels and not let Neal take hold of that football for very long, Illinois has a really, really good shot of winning this game. It's got to be that true Big Ten versus Big 12 matchup on who's going to win, that fast-paced Big 12 and Illinois doesn't quite have the athletes to keep up, or is it going to be the Illinois and Big 10 way where you're just Big 10 westing it? Caden Fagan takes over. You get a few passes into Pat Bryant and to Franklin, and Luke Altmaier just takes care of the football. Is that like Iowa-like game manager and doesn't make mistakes? Then Illinois can win this game. But if there's some mental miscues, if there are some 3-and-outs there, and Daniels is able to get a 14-3 lead very quickly, it's going to be a look back at last year's game. Sonny, I can't hear
Exactly.
you.
At that point, all the air is going to be left out of that stadium. For me right now, like, Illinois had 4 turnovers in that first half of last week's game. I think the spotlight's on Aaron Henry and that defense right now. Everyone's talking, when you talk Kansas football right now, you talk about that offense, James Daniels and Devin Neal. Aaron Henry was embarrassed last year, and he's admitted afterwards that he quite wasn't ready for that onslaught. And, he was new, he was green at that point. He doesn't have that excuse this year. If Illinois can get a turnover early, I talked about this in my official prediction episode. If Illinois can kind of do what Kansas did, if they can go up 10-0 or even 10-3, and then all of a sudden revert back to Brett Bielema ball, you have the horse in Caden Fagan. You have Aiden Lawford, who had a fantastic first game as well. Milk that clock. Keep Kansas's weapons off the field. Don't let Daniels and Neal beat you. Force them to make plays on the defensive side, because quite honestly, on the offensive side, I think we can keep up with them. It's the defensive side where I'm kind of worried about whether we can, keep up with guys that they have on their offensive side. So I think the key is, especially in that first quarter, if we can get a quick turnover, if we can get a pick, get a quick touchdown, and then all of a sudden you're talking about 60,000 people in Memorial Stadium, that energy, which is already high, reaching even other levels.
Yeah, I think looking at the defensive side of the ball, I think whichever team commits the least defensive penalties is going to end up winning this game. Last year, there were some penalties on the defensive side of the ball. There were some eye candy that was just completely like, there were defensive ends and offensive line and outside linebackers, pardon me, that were just glazed over at some of the motion that Leipold's offense has, and that really made a difference in Illinois' ability to just kind of pin their ears back and really go after the football, see man, see ball, go tackle the ball kind of thing. Like that was missed in last year's game. Plus, third and 15s, third and 12s, like, and end of half situations where Illinois was just outclassed, where Illinois couldn't get their defense off the field. It was constantly something. It was a third and 14, up 15-yard completion. It was a end of half that you may be building some momentum to. Then Jaden Daniels threw a long pass and boom, it was first and goal for the Kansas Jayhawks into the first half. And then it's just like, oh, that momentum's killed. So that was fun. I mean, there are certain instances in last year's game that you hope Aaron Henry has viewed this and can improve upon in just those small situations. And I think that can make all the difference in the world. Yes, it was technically a blowout last year, but there were some positives for this Illini team. Like Luke Altmaier had a great second half in that game, but the first half was just it was all null and void. So I think that plays a major factor. And Alex over at Armchair Comments said Illinois has to start strong, can't have the crowd get disengaged. And I fully believe that. Like, if that Memorial Stadium is rocking similarly to the way it was against Wisconsin back when they upset them as the number 5 team in the country, you think Arizona State, that non-conference game that took place back in 2012 or 2011, one of those two games, like Brock Osweiler coming into town and Illinois was able to up into the Arizona State Sun Devils. So I think if you have a similar kind of push in that first half, then man, that can make all the difference.
And I mean, you mentioned his name, Luke Altmaier. This could be the Luke Altmaier breakout game. We didn't really talk about it yet on game day. Herb Street was the one guy on the panel member who picked Illinois to win, and he had some very positive things to say about Luke. The attention is going to be on Daniels, of course. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the entire nation. But Luke, he played with a different kind of moxie, a different kind of confidence level last week. And if he can carry that over to this week, all of a sudden you have a mistake-free game like you were talking about. Right now, the narrative on him is, yeah, he commits a lot of turnovers. Now, a majority of those turnovers were at the beginning of last year when, as we discussed before, the offensive line was kind of in shambles and we hadn't really established our running game. But he can turn that around today. All of a sudden, if Luke has a good, solid game today, a lot of people around the Big Ten, you mentioned, the Big Ten may have been 17-1 in week 1, but they're eking out victories so far here in week 2. I haven't checked the
Yep.
update on like the Wisconsin game, but they're struggling. As you mentioned, Penn State struggled to beat Bowling Green. If Luke has a good game today, and we already have seen what Caden Fagan is capable of doing week 1, it's not out of the realm to say that Illinois has one of the best offenses in the conference. And I've been saying that already for a couple weeks now, but other people are going to start noticing. And then all of a sudden, you're talking about, a mid-tier, or perception-wise at least, Illinois team being all of a sudden being talked a little bit more favorably. And now all of a sudden, some of the matchups that we have later on, including the Michigans and whatnot, Illinois is going to get a little bit more publicity. And that's kind of what this program needs.
And you talk about Luke Altmaier. Like, I think a lot of people forget how good Luke Altmaier truly can be as a quarterback. I mean, you think of last year's Kansas game where I think that spooked Luke Altmaier for the rest of the season. Like, I think that one game was really a game that shifted his mindset into I need to rush. I need to throw, 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 throw. I need to just get the ball out of my hands. The rush is just getting to me. That continued on in the Penn State game last year. I think there are situations this year where where Luke Altmaier can prove to himself, I can stand in the pocket, I can deliver the ball. I have some talented wide receivers at my disposal this year, even better than compared to last year. And I think that it's just going to be a situation where it's like, hey, Luke Altmaier is going to be better this year. He was rated like 14th in some preseason quarterback rankings that we saw. I think that can climb to at least top 7, top 8 by the time this season's done if he takes care of business.
I mean,
And
14
Wright
was
says we need a blue and orange ant shield. Yes, we do. That would be awesome. And
Well, I mean, don't the
absolutely.
folks at the armchair have a new graphics guy now? Come on, get those interns to work.
Hey, Alex, come on. Talk about my TV being tilted because of Jalen Hurts throwing an interception in the end zone last night. Let's just get some graphic design people on that. Put that next to Armchair Illini. But yeah, this game is vital to the Brett Bielema era. I think Illinois can make a bowl game if they lose in this Kansas game, yes. But this is a program definer. This is a if Josh Whitman made the right call kind of thing between Lance Leipold and Brett Bielema. I mean, like may seem unfair, but hey, that was the decision between Lance and Brett. And if Lance gets the best of Brett and showcases that he can put Kansas of all teams into a top 25, then hey, Josh might be keeping awake at night like the Giants owner because Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I mean that's still that's going to be a storyline that's going to follow Brett Bielema and Lance Leipold for the next X amount of years. We all know the narrative at this point. Leipold was considered the favorite. We all watched that bowl game, his last game at Buffalo, thinking he was going to be announced as the new head coach at Illinois. Obviously, they went with Brett Bielema, and Lance, granted, with some of Les Miles' recruits, has been on a tear. They've been in the top 25, and Illinois has kind of struggled since then. But today's a big game. Right now we've had 3 recruiting cycles. We have a chance for Brett to close the gap a little bit. If Lance and Kansas run away with the game again, it's hard to argue that Josh Whitman made the right choice at that point. Like Lance has got, I mean, we'll see what happens when Daniels and Neal are gone and some of the studs that he recruited. We'll see if he's able to recruit at a level where they can stay competitive. But again, this is arguably, I forget who it was. Someone wrote an article this past week that said that this could be Brett Bielema's biggest game of his career. And in a lot of ways, I can understand why. All the different narratives, not just impacting the season, but impacting his own potential to continue here at Illinois. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think from Brett Bielema's perspective, he's showcased that he can beat a lot of these Big Ten West teams based on his reputation. I know the Big Ten West doesn't exist, but they are your close peers in how you're building a college football team in this new Big Ten. You have to pass up Iowa, you got to pass up Wisconsin, you got to continue to be better than Minnesota to showcase that you shouldn't be left out of whatever next iteration college sports are. Um, and I think with the way Brett Bielema has built this program, you need a marquee non-conference win, and that's something that Brett Bielema just does not have yet.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, what is that marquee win? Like
Uh, Penn State 9 overtime, maybe.
right. But really, what did that game mean? It signaled that it could potentially be the
Good point.
turnaround of the program, but it didn't really catapult us anywhere. Maybe all that showed us was it wasn't the Lovey years anymore. But as you said, this could be that game. This could be that game in front of a sold out crowd. You got Illini fans super excited. And again, if you win today, you're talking about, hopefully, of course, beating a MAC team next week, a big showdown down against Nebraska. And then who knows? Like we've seen Michigan. Michigan doesn't look like Michigan. One of my bold predictions on one of my other shows was talking about Illinois is going to upset Michigan in that 100-year anniversary game. And now it doesn't seem like it's quite as outlandish of a prediction that it might have been even 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think the 2 games you might be thinking of in terms of Brett Bielema's top wins would be the back-to-back stretch where he beat Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, and Nebraska all in a row in 2022 to be 8-4. Like I think that stretch is equal to like one top 5 win because no coach has ever done that in this new Big Ten era. So I think that could be one of Brett Bielema's top wins. But let's get back to this game on a micro level. I think Hugh Robertson is going to be a huge factor in this game. He was ranked last in terms of Big Ten punter averages at
Really?
39 yards per punt. and that's out of 18 now. So it's even worse of a stat to be last in a category. Um, so I think if Hugh Robertson has a better game than that, I think that can be huge because if you're going to play Brett ball, you got to be able to control that field position game. You can't give Neal and Daniels short fields to play on. So it's got to be a long field situation. You got to get them in the 20-yard line category.
Yeah, make them work. Don't make it easy for them. We know they've got studs on that side of the football, and the easier you make their job, the harder you make yours. That defensive line, I'm going to be keeping an eye on them. Like stats wise, like they played well last week, but it's against Eastern Illinois, and it's not like we blew them up when you look at that box score. This is going to be a much different game in about 45 minutes. Let's see how they perform against another Power Four type of team. The linebackers, Dylan Rosiak, can he continue his stellar play as of late? The defensive backs. I'm so grateful that we have Matthew Bailey today. Compared to last year, him being gone last year, it was arguable that he was going to be a team captain on last year's team, a guy you kind of really count on, and you kind of see what kind of impact he has in week one. If he stays on the field, I'm so much more confident about what we can throw out there on the defensive side of the football. And again, we're going to need all the talent that we have out there. So there's a lot of X factors here, but Matthew being back, I think, is one that has me a little bit more at ease.
Yeah, some current scores if you're watching us in the Big Ten. Iowa State 14, Iowa 19. That's in the third quarter. Maryland is beating Michigan State 24-17. Washington over Eastern Michigan 30-9 in the fourth quarter. And Wisconsin currently up only 20-13 to South Dakota. And that is in the fourth quarter right now. So the Big Ten kind of having some close games here with some teams they probably shouldn't be having close games with. So this
Not just
opens
the
up
Big
a
Ten, though. I'm
huge
taking a look
opportunity.
not just the Big Ten, though. Take a look. Auburn's down 14-7 in the fourth quarter. Auburn put up 70 last week. So It's like the college football world is going kind of crazy. Notre Dame only up 1 point. I mean, man, there's a lot
And
of
people
chaos
said
happening right now
and
in college
people said
football.
parity was leaving college football,
Yeah, but all right. So Austin, what do you think? Like, if you had to guess, how does the game go? Do you have a final score prediction?
Yes, I do. I think Illinois wins 35-31, and it's going to come down to Fagan breaking a couple long runs. I feel like that could be a possibility, or Aiden. I think one of the running backs breaks one. Maybe Caden beats the ever living hell out of the Kansas defensive line, and Aiden's speed allows him to break through for a long one. So I think 35-31. I think the defensive backs against Eastern showed that they can be ball hawks, at least. Like they can at least get their hands on the ball, which was nice to see, even though it was against Eastern. So I think there are some interceptions that can be had in this game for the Illini. So I'm going 35-31, and Illinois receives votes in the AP poll.
Oh man, that would be nice. I have a very similar score. I have 34-31, but I do have Kansas winning. I'm just going to stick to the prediction I made a couple days ago. I'll be honest, the vibes are a lot better right now. The student base seems to be really excited. The fan base seems really, really excited. And if again we get that turnover early, if we can get up early, whether it's 7-0 or 14-3, something like that, and all of a sudden we can control the clock, I'm going to feel a whole lot better about our chances. Just right now, what I saw from the defensive side of the football was promising week one, but this really is a prove it game for Aaron Henry. And to really show us that he's grown as a defensive coordinator, that all those whispers. I mean, keep in mind, Barry Lenny Jr. kind of had a similar trajectory, right? Like we hired him,
Mm-hmm.
and after his first bunch of games, people wondered like, who's this guy? He's not doing a great job either. Like Brett's 0 for 2 when it comes to offensive coordinators. Now Barry Lenny Jr. is considered one of the better offensive coordinators, not just in the conference, but in the country. A guy who might be able to get a head coaching job in the next couple of years. Is Aaron Henry also on that track? The only way to know that is if he proves it in games like this. I hope I'm wrong here. Of course, Illinois. Again, this is always funny, Austin. Like you're usually the pessimistic one when it comes to football, and I'm the positive one. But I had this 34-31 Illinois or Kansas in a very tight game. But I think a score like that will be close enough that won't necessarily have the fan base feel too concerned. They're not going to be leaving in masses, so to speak. I think it's going to show progress and hopefully continue to build excitement for the remaining rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, this is why you bring in those transfers. That's what I've been harping on this entire season is just the transfers on how they are able to blend in with this Illini team. And so far, the returns have been great for the most part. Alex, I'm with you. How dare
Well,
you, Sonny?
it's not just
Me and
you
my
two. I think
crooked
Alex might be
TV.
referring to my tweet. I had a comment on my Locked On Illini episode where someone literally said, "How dare?" Oh, let me read this tweet or this comment out loud. Illini channel, and you pick Can out of here. Channel blocked. So hopefully, I don't lose any subscribers with this loss prediction here on Illini Cast. Speaking of which, we're like 961. We're so close to 1,000, guys. So incredibly close. If you're watching this is a brand new season, of course. If you're watching this for the first time, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It costs you guys nothing, and it helps us, show up in the algorithm for other Illini fans, and helps this channel grow. So please, we're going to be trying to do this basically every pregame, and when Austin and I can, we're going to try to be doing this post game as well. We'll be taking in comments. I have a little longer form shows post game. It's going to be a lot of fun, but we can help with your support. So definitely hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already.
Kenosha 3-point shooter. I don't know what this means. Maybe it's because Illinois is playing some big fish in Champaign, or he's trying to get the word out about Illini Cast. Either way, good vibes on that comment of the two fish emojis. But this has been an episode of the Illini Cast. We'll let you get to some more pre-game of the Illini versus Kansas. If you're watching from the tailgate lot, we thank you. Have a cold one for us, and if you subscribe, thank you so much as well. This has been the Illini Cast, part of the Armchair Illini Network. Sonny, thank you, and go Illini.
ILL.